Hello. Well, I want to tell you my testimony. Um, I call it an act of love. And a young mother of four, two teenagers, and two toddlers. And of course, I was listening to Christian show at night from 8 to 10. And I was a Catholic. And so I was listening to the show, and sometimes I would call in a prayer request. And it started with my son, my oldest son. I had called him every day he was away in San Marcos at Gary Job Corps. And my daughter was in Austin. My older daughter was in Austin, and my oldest son he was in Gary Job Corps, and I was back home in the Rio Grande Valley in McAllen with two toddlers. And my son only needed 6 weeks to graduate. I had called my son like I always did, and he was acting really funny. And so I called him again, and I talked to him. I said, "Son, what's going on?" And for him to be quiet like that, there was trouble. He was in trouble. So he told me, he goes, "Mom," he goes, "I'm really scared. I'm really scared." He goes, "Mom, I've got 6 weeks to graduate, and I want to join the military." And he was 16. And he and his friends, of course, were caught smoking weed and drinking. And it so happens that they were doing a random urine check. And they all, had to turn in a sample of their urine because they were caught drinking and smoking weed. Well, that night I had talked to my son at about 7:30, and for him not to say anything, and after I had talked to him, he was not a troubled child. He just wasn't like that. He was a really good son. And but he concerned me. So he told me what had happened, and it was too late for me to call anybody. So I knew that he would be up all night worrying about this because he really wanted to graduate so that he could go into the military immediately. He had already been talking to the recruiters, and I understood that this was a goal of his. So, as a mother with two toddlers that had just been through a really big car accident, I knew this was important to my son. So I was like 6 to 7 hours away from him. So because he was late, and I didn't feel like driving. I didn't feel like I was up to driving all night long with two babies. I took a bus. So at midnight, I'm boarding a Greyhound bus from McAllen to San Marcos in Texas. And so I spent 6 to 7 hours on a bus all night long. I got to Austin at 7 o'clock in the morning. I got there, showered, and left the babies with my oldest daughter. And I said, I've got to go see your brother, John, and see what's going on with him. So, and by the way, I had called in that night before I made the trip. I had called in prayer for my son that everything would be okay, that the charges would be dropped, and that his urine would be fine. So here I am getting to Gary Job Corps in San Marcos, Texas, at 7:30 in the morning. And I showed up and I talked to the main office, and I said, "Something's wrong. I'd like to, see what's going on with my son. He's concerned that he may be dismissed from school, and this is very important to him. And I understand that they did a random urine test, and it may be negative. I don't know. That's why I'm here." He didn't know I was there. He had no clue, no idea that I had traveled all night long to be there for him in the morning. Well, by 8 o'clock in the morning, I had already gone to my son's dorms and brought him over to the main office to discuss what was going to happen to my son as graduation was nearing for him. And we talked about what had happened, and they're like, "No." He goes, "His urine, out of the four kids, is clean. There's nothing there. We didn't find any drinking alcohol in his urine, and we didn't find marijuana or whatever, what was going on. He was not in the habit of doing this, but pressure, you do it. You do it. And my son and I looked at each other. We were stunned. We were absolutely stunned that everything was clear. There was nothing to worry about. Well, my son, as when I left him that everything was okay, he was so grateful and so shocked that everything went so well for him that from that day on, he went to church by himself every Sunday. And I told my son, as soon as you come home, I'm going to come get you. And we both immediately wanted to get baptized and show Lord that we were serious about our spiritual walk. So my son and I together, my oldest son, John, we got baptized together, and that was, 22 years ago. And not a day goes by that I thank the Lord that this happened. And my testimony is an act of love from Father and Jesus. I was in shock of how everything went extremely well for my son, and that God heard our prayers. He did. And the fact that God heard our prayers, it changed our lives forever. Forever. I just wish I had done it sooner, but I'm so glad we both did. And that's our story. That's my testimony, is an act of love from God completely changed our lives, literally overnight. And I'm so happy. And I'll talk to you later.